Hello and welcome back to the Bro Force Squad podcast. This is one of our Westworld reviews. Today we're doing an extra special jam-packed one. We did not get a chance to review Westworld episode 5 because our real lives came up. Sometimes things happen, guys. We're people too. We want to be humanized to you, not these idols who you just listen to our opinions on things. So today we're going to do episodes 5 and 6. I am your host, Jeff Hornacek, and as always with me is my partner in crime, Alex English. Alex, welcome back. We took ourselves a bit of a hiatus, which after doing some research, it appeared that the show Westworld actually did between episodes 5 and 6. Did we plan this? Will the fans ever know?
Should we tell them why we took the hiatus, or should we just have them guess?
Let's let them write in their own theories, similar to what people are doing with this show.
Yeah, our Reddit page is almost as popular, I think, at this point. I mean, I don't go on there every day. I'm not a freak, but
no, we can't. It's just too inundated.
We're real people, you know. Let us live our life.
I wake up in the morning, I put my pants on one leg at a time, just like you. Except after that, I get to do this awesome podcast. So, those of you who have listened to these reviews before, Alex and I are obviously loving this show and eating up every little bit of it. But we don't do this where we summarize the plot. You guys have already seen it. We're not going to bore you with that, but we're going to quickly go over, well, not quickly, but we're going to go over episode 5 real quick and go through some theories, and then episode 6 and do the same. And I think you and I talked about this just before the show. The way that these two episodes worked out, it actually, I think, makes for a little bit of a better review to almost attach them as one episode, because we really, as opposed to some of the previous episodes, episode 5 focused on a completely different set of characters than episode 6, which I thought was kind of interesting. And with the strong cast we have in this show, it's sort of nice to let them really kind of gnaw their teeth into their roles a little bit more in each episode, like we kind of got in these two.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminded me a little bit of back when I used to watch Lost, and they would make it very obvious from the beginning, like, oh, this is going to be an episode about Locke, this is going to be an episode about Jack, and they would just, like, be very focused on those characters, and you would go the entire episode without seeing, like, very obvious, important aspects of another side of the story.
Right.
So in Contrapasso, which was the 5th episode, obviously we got a huge chunk of William and Dolores and Logan storyline where they traveled to the town of Pariah, which is like it's basically the Vegas of Westworld.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's like Orgyville,
stuff just goes down there.
Orgyville, USA.
Yeah, and yeah, that was also HBO. Just they're contractually obligated to have basically an orgy per show per season. I
Right.
think. If you remember, True Detective season 2 did it as well in like one of the last episodes of that season. But yeah, I mean, they get to this town, and at this point, I mean, we're both 100. Like it's 2 timelines, right? 100%. We're not allowing that to.
Yeah, I'll say this. At this point, if there
You're
aren't,
not convinced.
if there aren't 2 timelines going on, I would be much more shocked than the other way around at this point. And I think they would actually have way more explaining to do if these are in the same timeline. Also, it just seems a little too convenient. And I know that there could be ways around this, but it just seems a little too convenient if they're not in the same timeline, that there hasn't been any interaction between the 2 sets of characters that we think are in separate timelines.
Right, like, Maeve hasn't seen William. Like, in William's timeline, the chief whore, as we've called her, was actually, like, the big-eyed prostitute.
Right.
And she was she was basically doing the Maeve role. And, things like this, like, people that have become main characters in these 6 episodes, like William, Dolores, Maeve, Ford, like, we are not seeing them interact. Especially the ones that are all humans, we're not seeing them interact in the same time period. So I think that's one, pretty much they're making it almost so obvious that I don't really think it's even supposed to be
twist.
like, it's going to be a reveal,
Right.
But it's not going to be the reveal that actually, like, makes us go, like, I said it right at the first time when we started doing this. I said, when the show ends, we're all just going to have our jaws on the floor and be like, oh my God, Jonathan Nolan, you fucking genius.
Yeah, this seems like a smaller twist to almost, I don't want to say distract us from the real reveal, but something that, like, the way Jonathan Nolan is, he's like, I'll give you something that you can figure out while I completely, like, pull a batshit crazy move on you and blindside you.
Like, we'll set something else up, and that something else will definitely have to do with Arnold, because they've just been, like, mentioning him more and more and more through each episode. And so going back to the storyline with Dolores, William, and Logan, obviously they get to this town. Their whole point is they're trying to like follow, trying to get deeper and deeper into the world and try to uh, get as much of it as possible. Logan obviously influenced them a little bit in the beginning, and now they're kind of off doing their own thing. They had the big reveal with Lawrence, who basically we saw him get gutted like a pig in a scene, and then like 2 scenes later, he's like, back again. And they very obviously like focused on his face and was like, wait, didn't that guy just get hung up upside down by a tree, and then his blood was used to like, basically do
But
like
at least the
a blood
Man in Black,
transfusion on Teddy.
the Man in Black didn't make the child watch. He's not a monster.
Yeah, listen. If he needs to get himself some robot blood to keep our boy Teddy alive, then he's gonna have to do what he does. But he's gonna tell the kid to go away and find some water.
That shows you how calloused over the Man in Black is and how he views this world. He's like, I just view the blood inside your robot body as just fluid that I can use for whatever purpose I need it.
By the way, quick aside, and something really cool that I read I was reading up on the old movie, which I still haven't seen. It's not streaming anywhere, but it is you can like rent it on a bunch of different platforms for like $3. So I'm gonna do that soon. Oh, you okay there?
I'm dying, but yes.
Did you get some of that Pinot Grigio in your nose?
It's so oaky and so rich with flavor that if you don't like mellow your tannins, that's what happens. Your body reacts that way.
I know all about that. Jeff.
I'm sorry to throw you off.
What I was gonna say is well, actually remind me what I was gonna say.
You were referring to the Westworld movie that you had just read.
That's right. Thank you so much. I'm hammered. So the Westworld movie, they talk about how it's possible for the hosts not to be able to shoot at the guests. And I read this, and this movie came out in like the early 70s, and I thought it was like a really cool piece of like sci-fi type of writing. Apparently, in the movie, they talk about how the guns are designed in such a way where if they're pointed at something that actually has like warm blood, they won't shoot in that direction. I was like, that is so fucking cool. Like, why wouldn't they just use that in the show? It makes great sense. Like, yeah, the gun gets pointed in the direction of something that flows, has like warm blood, and the gun has some sort of sensor, and it's like trigger locks,
And this is kind of an aside that I don't think is that important to the show, but it's just something that I've been very curious about, and maybe even more curious as to why they actually haven't expressly told us what is going on with this. And if you're listening and you have a theory on this, please tweet at us or write on our Facebook what you think the explanation for this is. But why do you think they haven't expressly said why the host can't hurt us? And then this kind of comes up again when Logan and William go to Pariah. Is this a part of the park where the hosts are actually like fucking crazy and the rules don't apply to them? Because when William leaves Logan there, it almost seems implicit like this shit is real. This like when Logan is asking for his help, it doesn't seem like it's to the effect of, hey, would you mind assisting in me beating this level? It almost seems like I'm gonna die if you get on that train right now. It's kind of how I.
Yeah, he kind of looks a little bit scared, but at the same time he's like a little bit laughing. So it's hard to tell. And again,
he's a sociopath anyway, so it's kind of hard.
Yeah, so he's probably into it. He's like, if you asphyxiate me right here, that's what I want to do.
No, don't choke me out. Always like grabbing the robot, like, do choke me out. I need it.
It's like forgetting Sarah Marshall. Do you want to gag me?
Kind of. Now you brought a gag. That Logan's the guy who brings a gag into Westworld. He's like, humans call me a freak, but you robots won't be judgmental.
I thought this was a baby shower. Nobody else put their gag?
Well, it's like you brought a gag for a baby shower? Well, I mean, it was a joke gift. A gag gift, pun intended.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right.
We have derailed.
Yeah, and then earlier in episode 5, he is like basically being choked out next to the wagon wheel, and the guy's like literally like his face is turning blue, and then that's where William turns around and shoots the host, and Logan's like, "Oh, you're the man. Look at you. You got some balls now." Which again, they keep trying to make it. This is like a video game, and you can go. The way video games have turned the last 10 years, you basically get options. You can do a mission and kind of do it as the good guy, or you can do a mission and kind of do it as the bad guy, and kind of leads you through the game, and you end up in a different place. So then it also creates the ability to replay the game and get a different ending, right?
Right. And
so obviously they use this term black hat. He's like, come on, man, go black hat with me. And that's after that is when they end up going to Pariah. And he's like, I'm going to entertain this. And then he's not willing to go black hat all the way when he's surrounded by, which by the scene when they're in the, it was in the, basically the brothel with the orgy going on. And they're just awkwardly sitting on the couch there while everybody else is getting
they're
on
not orgying. They're just ordering steaks and everyone else is orgying.
They're just like, there's a gold speck on this ribeye, and I don't know about that.
Ask the chef if he knows what the fuck medium well means. Like, well, there's a sex party happening, so I don't really know if he's braising your steak properly. I apologize. But to that point, and this was a question that I was sort of wondering. So when they get to Pariah, Logan says, or at least implies, and he actually might even expressly say it, but this is basically a part of Westworld that is, for lack of a better term, kind of legend or folklore among the guests, right? Like, it's been rumored, and some people don't know if it's actually real, and not many people have found it if it is. And I'm wondering if if he knows what that entails. Like, when they walk in here, does he kind of get excited because either A, it's just a place he hasn't been before, and he's like kind of getting bored with the park, like disenchanted with the idea of it? Or does he, kind of like what I'm wondering, does he know that like this is a place where the stakes are raised, and it's basically like walking into a casino and it's like the slot machine might like punch your wife in the face or something, like the equivalent of like, now the games are playing you. This is real. How did you kind of interpret that? Because like you kind of get it, and it's like on screen what's happening, but I'm really confused as to what William's impression of this place was, and obviously what Logan's was, because he kind of knew more about it than he did. I got the feeling.
Yeah, so I think Logan obviously figures out that, you know, the guy they end up saving, is like, he's going to take us to El Lazo, and that's like the ticket to the best place in this park.
Right.
I don't think he's been there before because he's so jacked up about it. He's like, I've come here in the past. It's almost like he's saying, I've come to Westworld before, but I've never been able to find my way here. It's not one of those levels that, like, they happen to get there because they accidentally bumped into those dudes.
Right.
And he happened to not kill the right person, and then that guy happened to say, hey, don't kill me because I can take you here. And he must have just heard from friends or somebody else about El Lazo, and he's like, oh, this is our ticket. Like, we're going to get to Pariah, and that's way crazier than anything else you've seen. Like, this has been G-rated up to this point, and now we're going to go to fucking rated R territory, and I'm going to have a blast.
So does he know...
You guys should come with me.
Does he know that El Lazo is the maze, or does he just know that it's something really fucking cool that you want to get to?
And I didn't interpret it as it being the maze. I just interpreted it
I
as
just
being
saw it
a
on those
step
crates
the way.
in the train.
Yeah,
That's
right?
what
It was
kind of
all
hinted.
over the place. They keep showing that it almost looks like a horseshoe with like drawings inside of it, or I think you said a box of tricks. A box of tricks.
The back of the tricks when you're like sitting there in the morning doing the...
You try to do it without drawing, you're just looking at it, and then you lose your spot. You're like, I'm just never going to...
And then your sibling fucking draws on it. Like, well, great, thanks, Devin. Now no one can do the maze because you decided...
Fucking Devin, I know.
He's the worst.
So, I mean, I don't think that is the maze. I just think it's a way for them to kind of end up... And who knows? If we're operating under the two timeline theory, then maybe the maze isn't even something that's existing yet.
Right.
Maybe the maze is what Arnold built to kind of hide himself away from everything, and that's what the Man in Black is trying to find. Who knows? We still don't know. Sort
of segueing into the Man in Black, obviously the popular theory out there, and if you're listening to this, I'm sure you're very well aware, but and we've obviously discussed it at length, but the theory that William is the Man in Black 30 years prior, I think one thing that would really solidify that very soon would be if William gets word of the maze on his way to El Lazo or hears about it, but for whatever reason just comes up short of getting there, or something else happens and they're sort of derailed, because obviously the Man in Black has this, that's the pie in the sky in Westworld, is trying to get to the maze. So if William enters the maze at any point, then I think that would be maybe the only nail in the coffin where we could say, okay, you're not the Man in Black, because the Man in Black has not been to the maze. We can fairly well discern that.
Yeah, it's almost like, has anybody been there? That's the part that's, maybe Dolores, because again, they have obviously mentioned that she's been there the longest. And she's having these like weird visions of herself and a very Black Swan-ish kind of, I don't know if you ever saw that, but the scene where she figures out that she's almost got something inside of her arm.
Mm-hmm.
She starts picking at it, and it pulls, and then she's like, "Oh, what the hell am I doing?" There was a scene in Black Swan where it's the same thing, but she's like pulling on the end of like one of her like skin right on top of her nails, and it just like comes all the way up. It's very creepy, but anyways, good, interesting imagery there. But
Yeah.
it's almost like she's trying to find something, and right before she finds it, like she snaps out of it, and she's like seeing herself in the parade, and then she follows herself, and then she passes out. Then all of a sudden, she's talking to Robert Ford. Like, I don't think that's happened. I don't think he's coming into Pariah, taking her out and talking to her. Like, I think that's happening on a whole different timeline.
Totally agree.
And they're editing it together to confuse us. You know, like she passes out, so very conveniently, the next scene she's talking to Robert Ford. But of course, this is old Robert Ford. So if that's the case, then she can't possibly be 30 years in the past. So that's why I think it's spliced that way to confuse us.
And that's why this is going to be a show at the end where if you come back and rewatch it, that's the stuff that is going to be really interesting to see, because the context that we'll have on those conversations will be like, wow, this makes 10 times more sense.
Exactly. Yeah, I look forward to that for sure, because it's definitely gonna have great rewatchability. Just because of those conversations, when you figure out when they actually take place and then apply them to that particular timeline, you're going to be like, oh, that's so obvious.
It'll just add a whole nother layer to this show the second time through.
Exactly.
Which a lot of times, shows that have big reveals, like I'm assuming this one has, you really can't rewatch them because you're like, well, the whole, like, you know, reward in the show is the twist and turn. But this one is kind of like setting you up there, was so strategically done. That's part of the fun. Segueing into Robert Ford and just kind of the other part of episode 5, and then we can jump on episode 6. The scene towards the end of the episode where the Man in Black and Teddy meet up with, well, not meet up with him, he sort of just kind of interrupts their journey at the bar as they're kind of chasing down Wyatt. That was a really interesting conversation. Number one, two of the greatest actors in the history of the universe, in Ed Harris and Anthony Hopkins, just like wrecking shop on screen.
They're okay.
Yeah,
they're okay.
They do decent work.
Let's keep watching their career and see how it goes.
Yeah, it's too early to pass judgment if they're going to make it in this industry, I think. But also, it's a very interesting conversation because very obviously they know each other and have for a long time, and which you can assume because they treat the Man in Black like he's basically like has the keys to the castle. He can just do whatever he wants. But it almost seems like they have kind of an antagonistic relationship in a bit of a way. Like maybe something happened in the past, or maybe Ford just resents him trying to get to the maze and trying to sort of crack this code that he has, for lack of a better term. How did you interpret that conversation? Because when the Man in Black references Arnold, it made me think, who actually does know about Arnold? Because it seemed like when Ford told Bernard that was the first he'd heard of him, but now the Man in Black knows about him. And that's kind of confusing to me also.
Yeah, so it did seem like Robert Ford and the Men in Black are by far seem to have the most knowledge of this place than any of the other characters that we've seen so far, right?
Yes.
I mean, anybody else that's like part of the corporate structure, obviously any of the robots, they get wiped, so that's besides the point. They just seem to have an understanding, like they've been part of this from the beginning, almost like Robert Ford has been, quote-unquote, the host because he is the guy who created it, and the Man in Black has been the guest because he's been coming there forever.
Yeah.
And they've kind of been growing and learning about this place together, and the thing they have in common is Arnold, who they seem to know a shit ton about, but are not giving us any inkling of it at all. And while that conversation's going on, it's so interesting because you don't really know what Man in Black knows about Arnold. You don't really know what Robert Ford knows, and you don't really know if Arnold, whoever he is, was whatever is, might still be alive, even told them the same stuff. Or it's such a like crazy hidden type of. And they're amazing actors, so you're just watching that scene. You're like, I don't give a shit. They could be like meowing at each other right now. I'd just be like all over this.
And actually, now I want to see that meowing scene. So let's play a quick game. I just thought of this off the top of my head. I'm going to say things that we quote-unquote know about Arnold, and you tell me if you think they're true, and then if they are, should we take them at face value? So things we know about Arnold. He was Robert Ford's partner. I think we can all assume that that's actually true, right?
Yes.
Okay. he is dead.
I don't think you could take that at face
Yeah,
value.
I don't think
No
we
way.
can either.
No way.
I don't think
No
we
way.
can either.
No way.
He. I'm sure, well, okay, so what else are some facts we know? Him and Ford had a falling out, it seems like? Or is that something that Ford has sort of tried to cover up or been very sort of
He was
coy?
saying Ford has said that there was an incident and he died in the park.
Okay.
Basically.
Do you believe that?
So we know about the incident. Do I believe that there was an incident? Yes. Do I believe he was dead? We already covered that.
Okay. I guess that's all we know now,
We,
which is
we know that the Man in Black knows him.
correct.
Okay, so but we almost know just as much about the Man in Black as we know about Arnold. So fuck, Arnold could be the Man in Black. Like we just have, it's so fucking like out of our realm of being able to understand what's going on that it's.
Yeah, I mean, to even like put together a theory, we have just, it's like where I'm holding sand. Like, I can't
Right.
do anything with this.
Exactly.
And as Anakin Skywalker would say, it's coarse. It gets everywhere. Great dialogue. So now let's jump into episode 6, which was just, they rocked out 2 great episodes back to back, and in 2 sort of different ways, because episode 5.
Completely different ways.
Yeah,
Yep.
episode 5 gave you a lot of in the park. They progressed those narratives, what's going on. Episode 6 gave you the other half of the show, which is outside of the park, and the corporation running Westworld. Do we get their name yet, or are they just Westworld Inc.?
Yeah. It's Delos.
Delos. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, which also in my reading of the original film, they were also called Delos. So that's a homage.
Very good.
Right.
So this one focuses on Delos and sort of this plot is really ramping up quickly. So Elsie in this episode, obviously she found previously the implant in the suicidal Rasmussen World's Strongest Man host who decided to bash his head in with a boulder. We've all felt like that Mondays, am I right?
Totally.
So she found the satellite implant. She's like, yeah, someone is like fucking with these hosts and sending themselves data. So Bernard says, okay, let's figure out who.
Actually, Bernard sounded more like this. Let's figure out who. Because he's a robot.
What if one episode he just starts talking in straight robot talk? And they're like, we've decided to just beat you over the head with this.
It's so obvious that
Did you get it?
Yeah, like his like speech chip breaks. So he can only.
They make a piece of toast. They make a piece of toast in his back or something. Like what? Why would a toast? Okay, never mind. I just said a toast.
A toast.
Not a piece of toast, but a toast.
Yeah, a toast. Yes.
So Elsie is doing some investigating, and we'll get into where that leads in a second. But I think the first part is, what do you think is happening with the host collecting feeds from inside the park? I think we sort of learned in this episode that there are a lot of hosts, not a lot of hosts, but there are hosts in the park that are unaccounted for to the Westworld employees. How long they've been there, we don't know. What their goal is, we don't know. And is it too late to stop what they've already done? We don't know. So do you have any theories on that? Or like, what did you sort of think of that? I don't want to say it's a reveal, but it's just kind of a, hey, this is happening. Like, keep your ears and eyes open.
Yeah, I mean, she takes the information over to Jeffrey Wright's character, and what's his name again?
Bernard,
I just blanked.
I believe.
Bernard, thank you. Yeah, Bernard. Robot, and he's like, well, I know how to like access these files. I just have to go down to like the old area, and it's like he goes down like 82 floors.
It's like his old porn computer. You can tell he's like,
right. He just like kind of gets his like fancy new tab and puts it next to like what looks to be like a basically early 2000s PC, and all of a sudden he's just kind of like, okay, let's see what I can find here. Which, by the way, when he turns on the PC, the old logo is on the screen. I don't know if you caught that.
Yeah, I did. And again, like, sure, it could have been just a simple rebrand, but with the Jonathan Nolan, J.J. Abrams, helm show,
yeah,
everything happens for a reason.
So sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, they do that for a reason. I don't think it's just, like, fun to put 2 logos in the show.
The only time they've mentioned it has been when it has to do with something in the past. When we saw it on young Anthony Hopkins, when we saw William arrive and pick out his outfit, which we now assume is happening in the past, and now when it's supposed to play like kind of like as a relic of the past.
Right.
And Bernard very obviously says, I have to check the old computer.
And so very clearly they make that floor similar to in episode 1 when the Hemsworth's character has to go down and investigate one of the old hosts. They make it clearly look run down and decrepit and like, we don't go on this floor anymore.
Right, but Bernard has access. He doesn't know who Arnold is, but somehow he has access to like floor B82, whatever that means. And by the way, why are they digging 82 floors into the ground? That seems very bad for the core of the Earth.
It's
Just saying.
gratuitous, but I mean, if this isn't America, that would play into that, like America.
Uh, so anyways, he goes and yeah, like you said, he just finds all of these things. He's like, oh my god, there's a lot going on. He decides to snoop around and investigate one of those set of hosts that are unaccounted for, and almost gets killed by Robert Ford's dad. That was designed by apparently Arnold, according to Robert Ford. He happens to just randomly be there at the right, which is a TV show trope that they really need to stop. The person can't just be there, right? Like Bernard's getting choked out. And Robert Ford's like, oh, stop. He just like puts up his hand and they all stop. And he
That's enough.
That's
However.
And that's at that point we see a really interesting switch in Bernard. He's like, oh, I didn't know all this, man. Like this is a little. I was with you about the reveries and all that, but this is a little much. Like this is starting to get kind of creepy and dangerous. We're supposed to be an attraction. What did you think about that?
And I think Bernard's like, this is double fucked up because. Like, these hosts do, like, it's one thing if there's hosts in the park and we don't know about them, but these don't adhere to the rules of the other hosts. This one was choking me out right now, not listening to any of my voice commands. And I'm pretty high up on the food chain here, so, like, what are you doing exactly with these?
Yeah.
It's like, it's very innocent, Bernard. It doesn't mean anything. He's like, yeah, but these things are, like, out of control, so I don't really...
Yeah, it's an artist putting his imprint in his own work. It's like, yeah, but this is different because we allow real human beings to come in here and we probably don't need them to die. Just saying.
And you almost see at that point, Bernard, and this kind of happens again, and we'll get into this just a second when he meets with Therese, but he acts like everything's all right with Ford, but he leaves and he has a look on his face like, I don't trust you anymore. Like, I can't. The stakes are too high, and you've just... Like, I've seen something that we really can't come back from this.
And he goes straight to his, work fling. Miss, I want Robert Ford's job, head of security or whatever she's head of.
So he quit.
I lose track of all the departments. I have a hard enough time keeping track of the departments at my job. It's like, damn it, this show.
Yeah.
So I'm sure somebody somewhere did like a corporate like pyramid map of everything, and we can go and check it out. But I have a life.
Yeah, I sort of have a life. If it's on the internet, though, I'll find it. Trust me. So let's finish up his story real quick, and then we'll go to the other storyline in episode 6. So Elsie goes into Westworld. She finds out where the feed is being transmitted to. Is that correct, how I interpreted that? I got the gist of it, but I didn't exactly know what technically was happening. So she finds a place in the park, Westworld, where this feed, the implant from the weird rogue, bodybuilder, kill myself host is sending this information to. She goes in the park. Now, this was like a little too stereotypical. The imagery of like the creaky house and hello, like clearly something bad is going to happen.
There were like creepy dolls and stuff. It was, very obvious.
Yeah, once she walked in the house, I was like, the odds of you making it out of here are probably not great. The only way the odds would be worse, and I hate to say this, but it's happened too many times, if you were an African American. Because they always seem to die first in these movies. So she walks in, she uncovers this feed, and she calls Bernard while he's approaching Therese, his old fling. Maybe you want to talk about this. Maybe you wanted to hit that one last time. Who knows? The thirst is real. And she basically says, so I found out who is like getting this information, and it's Therese. And was Arnold either sending it to her, or was he also receiving the information? Or he was the person who logged in, is that correct?
By the way, is it Therese or Teresa?
That's a good question. Her and I are in a very close relationship, so I call her Therese.
Okay, I call her Tyrese, like the singer.
She prefers that. She's a big Fast and Furious fan. She prefers that.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Tyrese.
So Elsie, who I gotta admit, I've actually kind of started to develop a little bit of a crush on as this show has gone on. Something about her dirty mouth and like, she doesn't play by society's rules. I kind of think that I'm sort of fall into that same box as well.
Yeah, two peas in the same pod, for sure.
Exactly. So she calls Bernard, and again, he has this similar reaction with Ford, where he's like, well, fuck, now I can't trust Teresa. Like, what is going on? Because if she's somehow involved in this. So
his robot brain is having a hard time computing all of this.
exactly. What if he said, "Hang on, Elsie, beep boop beep beep boop boop beep"? So how did you interpret that? Like, is Teresa
Your
actually
toast is
involved?
ready.
Yeah, one toast here for you. Is Teresa actually involved? Is someone framing her? And then what is someone using Arnold's login? Or now this we have to address this again. Is Arnold actually alive? Like, what is going on?
Okay, that's a lot of information to
Let's go
unpack there. But
Teresa
basically,
first. What's she doing?
I think Teresa is committing corporate espionage against her own company, but I think she may be doing it at the request of some other people on the board without Ford's knowledge. They're kind of asking her to be the inside man, so to speak, even though she's a woman.
Her and Ford have like this sort of cat and mouse relationship where they're not forthright with each other at all, and they both know that, and it's really interesting when they have a discussion.
Exactly. As for Elsie, she's just going off, trying to be the hero and figure out what the fuck's going on, because, quote, I'm the only one without a fucking agenda around here, end quote, which she actually said, like, in an earlier episode. So she's just kind of trying to figure out what's happening, because she's like, we're supposed to be running this park, and this is way out of control. Like, this should not be happening.
Yeah.
And she does the stupid mistake of going out, first of all, A, at night, B, alone, C, not running the fuck out of there when she starts hearing noises and very obvious footsteps. By the way, quick aside, this episode was directed, we both agree that it was by far the most, typical type of, this is kind of how TV shows work. They have these kind of rules. They set up this tension. There's a mystery. There's, little kind of tropes that they followed in this episode, more so than the first 5. Would you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. And that's why when I read that there was a break in production between 5 and 6, you and I wondered if that was at all part of it, or what. I still don't know exactly what was going on, but I don't want to say it felt disjointed from the rest of the show, but it had a unique feel to it.
It did, for sure. I would agree with that 100%. And I went and looked. The guy who actually directed this episode and directs next week's episode, his name is Fred Toy. But if you look at his IMDb, all he's done is TV. He's done a bunch of person of interest episodes, which is actually also a Jonathan Nolan show on CBS. Yeah. He's done Good Wife. He's done Falling Skies on TNT, CSI New York, Hawaii Five-0. He has no
CBS loves this dude. Oh my god! Yeah. Just direct every show that we have.
Yeah, he actually did some Alias, which was ABC. The original J.J. Abrams. He did a Lost episode, some Fringe, also a J.J. Abrams. So he's done a lot of TV, only TV. So it makes sense that they kind of take this break in real life, and HBO probably went to them. They have probably seen the first few episodes, and they're like, "What the fuck is this? We love it, but this needs to continue on the air. This needs to go on for a few years. This isn't a 10 episode and you're done."
And they're like, "This seems like a polarizing show. We need it to be a little more."
Yeah, we need to have characters that people care about. We need it to kind of create some continuity. We need people to get kidnapped. We need people to get tortured. All the obvious things that happen.
We need an orgy. Oh wait, you already did that. Never mind. You hit the quota.
So I thought that was pretty interesting that for these next episode is directed by him as well. Before they then move back to baller movie directors, and the finale is Jonathan Nolan.
God, I cannot wait for that.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. By the way, the name of that is the Bicameral Mind. Which, what? It makes, I don't know, just, it's going to be awesome. I'm sure it's going to be awesome. It's probably going to be 4 hours long, too. So, clear out your Sundays. But where were we? In terms of, I think she's committing corporate espionage. I don't think Robert Ford has any idea that it's happening. Elsie knows, but she's obviously, I have a theory. I think she actually got kidnapped by the Hemsworth brother, who is actually, we've seen them together before. We know he's kind of in charge of security, and I believe his boss is actually Teresa, and he probably got onto Elsie and kind of followed her along in the park, and is gonna basically pulled her aside and is like, listen, you can't be doing this. You're reaching way higher than you need to be in your position.
Yeah.
So I think that's...
that would be slightly anticlimactic, but I think it makes the most sense.
I think it makes them... Like, I don't think Arnold's out there, like, tiptoeing in cabins with weird dolls and, like, kidnapping, fucking interns.
Although, not a bad life. When it hit my ear, I said, I could do that. I mean, shit. Just pretend to be dead for 30 years and collect weird dolls and kidnap people. I mean...
And also, you would have to think Arnold at this point is as old as Robert Ford, right? They probably started this around the same age. They were, so he's not, and unless he has like robots that are doing his work for him, which is very possible, But I don't think we're seeing Arnold. I don't think we're seeing Arnold until the finale, or not necessarily seeing, but maybe
finding out
100% finding out what he's all about, or if he even is a real person, or like I said on our last podcast, I was like, crackpot theory, Robert Ford Arnold, same person.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think Arnold is someone we've already met?
That would be a pretty cool... It's possible.
I think he might be. I don't have any, again, we're bros just like you guys going through the show. I have no fucking idea more than anyone else, but he's probably someone we've met. So
right.
Last thing we need to get into, and I think you and I said this before the show, maybe our favorite thing in both these two episodes is the Maeve storyline in episode 6, and specifically, obviously, the actress playing her, Thandie Newton, hashtag national treasure, hashtag we know she's from the UK, but still. So she is incredible in episode 6, and I think has the most interesting and unique thing that we've seen from a host in this show, and something that really lets you know, hey, we know this is a story and a show about artificial intelligence, but it's not just going to be the classic robot turns on master and tries to kill them. There is a very cerebral, very intuitive approach to what is happening here.
Right.
Maeve basically comes to grips with, I am a robot. Okay, cool. That's fine. I'm not going to freak out about that anymore. I want to be smarter. I want you to make me more awesome. And also, I'm just better than you guys. So, just chill out. I'm not going to kill you, but, help me here. It's a really dumbed-down version.
This is definitely, the tape that her agent is sending to, the Emmy people.
Yeah.
For, be like, hey, by the way, just in case. The scene, especially when she's sitting on the table and she's looking at the tablet that's, predicting exactly what she's saying as she's saying it.
That scene was so cool.
That was so cool.
That was so cool.
It was amazing, yeah. And her, just the way her face, she visibly just starts freaking out.
She glitches, and it's
and then she glitches, and she's like, "I can't
because that's what would happen. Yeah, you'd be like, "What?"
Yeah, and I think she's definitely the character that, or of all of the hosts, she's the one that I've read some stuff online about. Obviously, the Turing test is when a robot is able to convince you that they're not a robot, right? So it's the famous Blade Runner. That's basically the whole plot in Blade Runner. But
right.
There's basically this counter theory to that where it's the most dangerous robot is the one that knows they are a robot and they actually know that they are, but they can convince you that they don't know that they are. So they kind of turn it on its head. And I feel like that's kind of what she's doing. Because the more she learns, she's able to be like, yeah, I know I'm a robot. Great, that's cool. Let's move that to the side. Now, how do I get to be smarter? And it was oh, that's really cool. No other one is they're seeing stuff, they're having visions, but she's really getting down in the nitty gritty and trying to figure out how to make this better for herself.
Yeah, and that realization and that self-analysis gives her the upper hand, because the whole advantage we had over her was that she doesn't know she's a robot, but when she's that's the epitome of being sentient. Yeah, no, that's fine. You're the human. You made me, whatever. But I'm still better than you, and I know that, and I'm going to exploit that. So The thing that I'm really wondering now, and we still don't know how this is going to tie into everything else that's happening, but what is Maeve's endgame? What do you think she wants? She doesn't seem ill-intentioned. She just seems at this point sort of thirsty for knowledge, whereas Dolores seems like she has an ulterior motive that we don't quite know of yet, that's been sort of put in her head by Arnold or Bernard.
Dolores is on a huge acid trip, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah, and Maeve is actually very sober. She's just trying to really take notes and figure out what's going on.
She's gone from very naive to now, I don't want to say ambitious because like I don't even know if she knows what she wants, but I'm trying to think mainly how is this going to tie into the rest of the show, what her character is doing.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah, I mean it's interesting, and I think we've seen a lot of her. I would say she's probably had close to
yeah,
the most screen time of anybody, right?
and that's even with her. I don't know if it's episode 1 or 2 that she was hardly in at all. Maybe like 1 or 2
Yeah, she
scenes.
wasn't in it at all. But overall, I mean, she's been in it a lot, and I think they're using her as kind of like a framing device for how this applies to the rest of the show. But it does seem very disconnected from anything else that's happening, like the whole Arnold storyline and the whole like corporate espionage. Like it seems completely unrelated, and I think it's the most like human story, which is
Yeah.
funny because she's a robot, but it's definitely the most grounded one. It's like you can relate to that. Like you're a brand new person in a new place. You try to like figure everything out, and you're kind of learning as you go.
Yeah,
Um,
it has me really intrigued, and obviously they'll find a way to interweave all these stories at some point. But hers right now is the one that I don't want to say disjointed at all because that'd be discrediting the storytelling and the way they've written everything. But at this point, it seems like the most independent of the storylines because even those technicians, to my knowledge, maybe they've interacted with Elsie briefly. Yeah, they did briefly actually, but they haven't talked to Robert Ford at all or any of the people on the board or anything, the people writing the narrative. So they're lower level workers who are now basically under her thumb. So it'll be really
right,
interesting to see how what does she even want, I guess, is kind of the thing
right.
that we don't know.
And by the way, speaking of Emmy tapes, you know who's not sending an Emmy tape to?
Yes.
You know, you know whose agent is not sending an Emmy tape
Although
out.
maybe more pathetically he is. But yeah, the red-headed bearded guy who Thandie Newton is acting circles around, who's fucking standing in that room just being awkward.
Hey, man, we're gonna. You can't do this, man. Like that's how it's
That
like.
was
That's how
better
it's
than
gonna
him,
be.
though. That was better than him.
And I didn't even practice. Oh my god.
He's
Yeah,
related to someone on the show, obviously, or
he
someone
has to
like
be.
owes a big time favor, and they're like, "I'm gonna cast this guy," but you gotta. We're even now, and you may
We're,
even fucking owe me now.
it might make it really hilarious when he just dies violently, getting kicked in the head by a horse later on. Like who knows?
Even
Who
if
knows?
it doesn't progress the story at all, if it's just like done, it'll be a relief to me. I'll exhale audibly. I'll be like, "Thank God he's out of the show." All
Listen,
right,
it's at the end of the day, this is a 10 episode production, so you can't just have amazing. You're gonna have at some point the budget's gonna cut in, and you're gonna be like, all right, oh shoot, we never cast the second technician. What do we got left? Oh, this guy will do it for free. All right, we'll get him.
yeah,
He'll
like,
do
well,
it.
I actually just got the oil changed in my car. The mechanic looks the part. I'll go grab him if you want. He just wants
Yeah.
lunch. That's really all we have to pay him. So.
And I guess the other thing we can touch on really quickly is we had the return of our favorite British douchebag.
Oh yes, almost forgot about him.
Yeah, he made his way back in. They were like, oh, he's been on sick leave because his feelings were hurt
Yeah, 'cause he's
when Robert Ford just pissed all over his storyline, and then he went and pissed all over the map of Westworld. Which,
literally.
by the way, if that any real life place of employment had that policy, I'd be pissing all over the place if I wasn't going to get fired.
Yeah, if I knew that it was just kosher, then of course we would be relieving
Yeah.
ourselves.
It's
By the
like,
way, and this is an aside, but when you told me that actually was Tessa Thompson, she is insanely gorgeous. It's almost it is distracting. I can't focus on her acting because of her face.
and also speaking of cast, like, come on,
we
like,
get it.
when-
Like, take your
yeah.
foot off our throat, HBO. We're dead. We're dead already.
Yeah, it's disgusting at this point. So yeah, of course she makes her appearance here, and we have 4 more episodes where she's obviously she is the closest tie that we have to the outside world.
Right.
We don't know if she got to that place by car, train, spaceship, because there's the theory that they're not even on Earth, basically that they're on Mars or something. But we have no idea how she got there, and what kind of like her feelings are on what's going on. But obviously she got to learn a lot of what was going on from a very drunk Sizemore at that baller pool club.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I love that they just have that there. It's like, I'm done raping and killing robots. I just want to go chill and have a margarita by your beautiful pool resort. Can I do that for $10,000 a
I just want to
day?
dip my toe in the water and just reminisce about what just happened. And we can assume, because you don't cast someone of Tessa Thompson's stature to come in and have a bit part, her character will play a significant role, I'm sure, in the next few episodes and
Absolutely.
kind of the end of the show. So,
For sure.
all right, that's it. We ran a bit long today, but obviously we had 2 episodes to cover and a lot of meat in terms of the storyline and where this thing went. Alex, is there anything else you have? I'm sure our brain matter is all over the floor, so do you want to scoop it all up and just get one maybe final takeaway here?
I just wanted to thank our listeners for obviously downloading and listening to our special election night podcast that we just finished. So hopefully we're all here tomorrow. No, I'm just kidding. If you guys do for real have thoughts and you want to, maybe Twitter is not the best place to do it because you're limited by your characters. And this story, obviously, we're talking for hours on end about what's happening on this show. Send us an email, broforcesquad@gmail.com. Tell us your theories. We'll reply to everything. And if it's something that particularly captures our attention, we'll mention it on the show and drop you a line.
Yeah, we would. This is one of those shows that is just ripe for any type of discussion. So please let us know what you guys think. Thanks again for listening, guys. We'll be back next week with our episode 7, and hopefully all our brains are still intact after what this show is continually doing to us. We are the Bro Force Squad. Be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes. Bro Force Squad, 3 words. Find us on Facebook. Check out our YouTube channel. Check out our website, broforcesquad.com. We appreciate all the feedback. We will be back with you next week, and take care. We'll talk to you soon.